So this week on the Stereo Image, we're lucky enough to have the great Glenn Alai with us. He runs the whole show for the Penn and Teller organization. He has built it from the ground up into the behemoth that it is these days. And I've known him since he was a wee lad and knows more, is an encyclopedia of popular music up until recently. And the golden age, as we like to refer to it. So thank you for coming on so much today, Glenn. It's really great to have you here.
You're welcome. Yeah, don't ask me anything about music that was created after 1980.
Right. No, I mean,
Yeah,
those are the dark ages. That's when
that's
the
right.
amateurs came in. But no, I just wanted, there's a lot. I've been very excited about this
It's
because
been a long time. It's been a long time in the making.
yes, it's been a long time coming. And, but also every time you just throw out these facts that blow my mind because you're younger than me. And
Which is still saying that I'm old.
well, yeah, you're still old. I mean, everyone's younger than me except, you know,
Right.
Penn and Teller. But all of the stuff that you listen to and all of the expertise that you have is in an era that's really before you were born. I mean, the people that you've seen live it's the list. Do you have a list?
I actually do have a list. About 20, about 25 years ago, I started keeping track of every show that I've ever seen, and
Uh-huh.
I have a
Wow.
since I was a kid, I have collected, whether it be a ticket stub or a playbill or a program or something from a
Mhm.
show that I saw. So I went back through all my scrapbooks, and yes, I have scrapbooks. I have like 40 or 50 scrapbooks, and I went back and I cataloged every show that I've ever seen, and I keep so you know, tonight I'm going to see, the dress rehearsal for, Jennifer Lopez, so I will add that tonight,
Uh-huh.
to my list.
Wow.
It's probably about 1,500 shows, which I thought was
Really? That
low,
seems
right? Yeah. I
low.
see about 40 or
Yeah.
50 shows a year, and it seemed low,
Wow.
like, I thought it was over 2,000, but I don't think it is.
Wow. Wow. Well, the thing is, you see everything, which is amazing. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but your business is
Yeah.
show business. So
That's what it says on my business card. My business is show
yes,
business.
and there is no business like it, I've been told. But so I understand, but I don't understand. I mean, I understand how I became a jazz piano player. We had two player pianos in my house, and my
Yeah.
dad loved jazz. Um, I also listened to rock and roll and played in rock bands and stuff, but that was never my upbringing. Um, I don't understand how, an 80s kid, basically, which is what you are, latched on to Stephen Eydie.
Um, so after school in the 70s and 80s, when I would come home, you had Dinah Shore and Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin and John Davidson and Tony Tennille and all of those shows. And you still had variety shows at night. Uh, Captain Tennille, Tony
Mhm.
Orlando and Dawn, Donnie and Marie, and
Right.
variety shows were on all the time.
Yep.
If it wasn't a regular variety show, there'd be some wacky, Linda Carter Christmas special, something.
Right.
Um, and I became enamored of that, and, I would just sometimes I would go in the basement, and that's where my parents had their chest of albums with
Uh-huh.
with the turntable on top. There was a shitty
Mhm.
turntable downstairs, and then there was a nicer I can't remember the name of the stereo, but you and I have talked about it. It was like Zance or Grants or
Uh,
Ganance or
oh,
Marantz, yeah.
Marantz.
And, that
Yes,
had the
yes.
eight-track tape player, and that was a double cassette and, a really nice turntable. But, I started listening to my parents' albums.
Yeah, but I know Mike Douglas and Dinah Shore and all those shows were on, but what drew you to them? Like, were you interested in the guests, or did you like the presentation? I mean
I loved all of I loved all of it. I thought even then, I thought the top 40 stuff was fun, and, but even then, I
Mhm.
think I kind of thought that I loved disco as a kid.
Uh-huh.
But the
Sure.
arrangements and now looking back now, the arrangements and stuff are for pop music at that time, the horn arrangements, the string arrangements, they're great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, you know, there's more musicians on "You Light Up My Life" than anything that's been
Right,
on the radio in
right.
the past 10 years, you know what I mean? Real string sections, real horn, real musicians, real arrangements, and, you know, a cast of, like, 60
But
people.
but to answer your question, I don't know exactly what made me enamored of that kind of show business, but, I
Mhm.
just became completely enamored with it.
And was it just was it musical numbers, or was it also, like, stand up and
All of that,
magicians and all
all of that.
that kinda stuff?
I loved the old time comics that were on those shows,
Mhm.
Red Buttons,
Sure.
Shaggy Green,
Shecky
but, like,
Green.
people like Foster Brooks and Charlie Callis and Rip Taylor.
Oh,
My parents always said that
right.
I had the corniest taste in entertainment. Corny, I absolutely loved it. The cornier the better. I loved Hee Haw, and my parents were
Wow.
like, "What?" This a Jewish kid from New Jersey
It is
absolutely loved Hee Haw, and,
no
it was a
kidding.
great moment in my life when I
Wow.
got to see Roy Clark live on a double bill with Patty Page,
Sure.
by the way.
Oh, man. But, yeah, that's the other thing. It's like, certainly your peers were not, sharing stories of
Not
Lawrence
at
Welk
all.
with you.
Not at all, and it's
Um
funny, Lawrence Welk, I was thinking about this the other day, thinking about my great-grandmother, one of my great-grandmothers, we sometimes when I go over there on a Saturday night, they were watching Lawrence Welk or Liberace, and that might have seemed
Mhm.
torturous to other children, but I loved it. I thought it was
Really?
fantastic.
Wow.
Thought everything about it was great. And kind of a pivotal, moment was, I had become really interested in music of the '60s, mostly because that's what my parents' album collection was. Very
Right.
middle of the
Sure.
road, if they still use that term, very adult contemporary kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Fifth Dimension, Association, Neil
Mhm.
Diamond, Streisand, Andy
Mhm.
Williams, Glenn Campbell, the Osmonds, all that kind of stuff. But they also had contemporary records, top 40 stuff. But I loved the
Uh-huh.
Fifth Dimension, The Age of Aquarius. I love that album. And at that
Mhm.
time, Marilyn McCoo was the host of Solid Gold. So, there was a contemporary
Wow.
link there where I could
Okay.
see the person that was singing lead on these songs in this album that I absolutely loved, she was on TV every Saturday night.
Right.
And
Right.
we were in
Wow.
Atlantic City one summer, and, we walked into Resorts International Hotel and Casino, and there was a big backlit poster, "Coming soon, Alan King and Marilyn McCoo on a double bill." And I said, "Wait, what?" Well, there's a hotel and a casino in New Jersey that I can see Alan King and
Right.
Marilyn McCoo on the same bill. It was
Yeah,
mind-blowing
yeah.
and life-changing. I mean, literally changed my life, and, I was probably 12 or 13, maybe, and,
Mhm.
from that day on, I was like, "This is what I wanna do. This is what I want to do," and my music
Wow.
has already been kind of made, but that kind of solidified, yeah.
Well, but at that time, could a 12 or 13-year-old go in to see that
Yes,
show?
it was not common,
Really? Okay. Yeah.
um, and I was usually
Mhm.
the only kid when I would go see these shows, but, what other kid is going to see,
Right, right.
Buddy Hackett?
What are what other kid looking for, yeah, looking for Henny
Exactly.
Youngman's
What other
autograph.
kid is going to see Helen Reddy and
You
Gabe
know?
Kaplan on a double bill? And,
Right.
my parents were
Wow.
very, very, um they were very understanding of it, and they were very, generous with their time and taking me to see these shows, and they ended up enjoying them,
Well, that's
which is
amazing.
the
Yeah.
interesting 'cause, I would ask them to go see some people, and they go, "What? We're not taking you to see that. That's ugh," but no. Um, and I remember making my parents take me to see the McGuire sisters. My father just said, "That's like the music that our parents listen to." Said, "I think you'll like it."
Right.
And they left, they're like, "That was one of the best shows we've ever seen." I was like, "Yeah." They've been doing it for 50
Wow.
whatever, 40 years at that point. They're gonna put
Yeah.
on a good show.
Right. And it's funny because, you know, a lot of parents are, taking their kids to their gymnastics competitions or their ice skating competitions, or and your parents are taking you to see the
Exactly.
McGuire
And
sisters. So and it's the same training. I mean,
yeah, and then when I became a little older, when I say older, like 15 or 16, I don't know how I convinced my parents to let me do this, but I would take the bus to Atlantic City and see shows on my own. Sometimes a friend would come with me, sometimes my sister would come with me, once in a while my
Mhm.
brother, but, I would go down and see Della
Well,
Reese, and I would go down and see
I
Carol
mean,
Lawrence and Rip Taylor and John Davidson, and,
but
my friends most of the time had no interest at all in doing that.
well, yeah, but also, and nothing is safer than a bus station in New Jersey for a
Yes, and
15-year-old,
certainly
you
Atlantic
know?
City in the '80s. Well, Atlantic City at any point, but no, and it was I
Yes.
would go down there and, I'd leave, whatever, late afternoon on a Saturday or a Friday after school, see the show, and then I'd come back at, like,
Wow.
2 or 3 in the morning with a dime, call my dad and say, "I'm at the bus station, can you come pick me up?"
You know, and how and then where exactly in New Jersey were you living?
A town called Highland Park, about 35 miles outside of the
Okay.
city. So there was also access to Broadway and all the stuff in New York. So, I was also exposed to
Right.
all that from we went to the city all the time. So I was also exposed to all
Wow.
that stuff too. But I was more interested in going down to Atlantic City, which was 2 hours away. So it was a 2-hour bus ride.
Okay.
Um,
I
yeah,
was gonna ask. Yeah, yeah.
but,
Jeez.
and then I got my driver's license. I was down there every weekend.
Jesus. That's amazing. And so you're watching all these shows and you're thinking, how did I mean, there's so much to ask. I mean, how what made you just I mean, you wanted to be in that world and so you thought, well, they need a manager or was I mean, was that in your thoughts at that
I
time?
wanted to be in that world, and at the time, there were 2 well-known entertainment directors in Atlantic City. A guy named Tom Cantone,
Mhm.
who's still doing it. He's the vice president of entertainment for Foxwoods in Connecticut.
Mhm.
And the other well-known entertainment director in Atlantic City was Joel Fishman. And, I
Sure.
learned these people's names, so I knew every entertainment director at every hotel on the boardwalk, and I found out,
Mhm.
where they went to college and what they did and what they majored in. I wrote these guys letters for advice and,
Wow.
and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. So I from a pretty early age when people were saying, at, career day, "What do you wanna be?" "I'm gonna be a fireman, a policeman, or a lawyer, or a doctor." I would say, "I wanna be the vice president of entertainment at a casino hotel." It was very strange. I look back at it
Wow.
now and, but again, my parents were hugely I don't know what the word is, if it's understanding or supporting or, humored me, but,
Well, it's
they really never said, "This is silly, this is nonsense. Why are you making us do this, or why are you
well,
wasting your time on this?"
well, it seems like, from their point of view, it's an attainable goal. You know what I mean? It's not like I wanna
Right,
colonize Mars, you know? It's not it's not a pie in
right.
the sky notion. You weren't saying I wanna be an Olympic athlete. You were saying I want a job that I think I can do. And clearly, if you're making lists and writing letters at that age to people to get their advice,
Yeah.
they know you're serious about it. And what did your dad
My
do?
dad owned an appliance, repair and parts store, and my
Uh-huh.
mother
Uh-huh.
my mother worked for the county government as the affirmative action officer. Um, there was
Really?
no entertainment background, but they were
No
very,
music?
very, they listened to music all the time. We always watched TV.
Mhm.
They went to Broadway shows all the time, and they would go to Atlantic City on their own and see shows,
Right.
but there was no show business,
Oh,
there.
that's it. Huh. That's yeah, that because it again, a lot of people that I talk to and a lot of friends of mine, there was at least something in their past, in their parents that they had an unrealized dream of being a musician, or they had, like with my dad, he was a decent singer, but he
Sure.
loved music and that was a big part of his life. So he made sure that we all
There
had it
was
around us.
none of that.
But that's
I have a
funny.
quick
None
question.
of that. Wow, and it's just like there wasn't any musician types in your life or and, entertainer.
No, there was no entertainment. The closest to that would have been my great uncle, was an MC during the war in the USO, and that would have been the closest to it. It did not
Mhm.
seem, and this is not to disparage, some of these, other places, but it did not seem like I lived in Idaho or Iowa. Um, we
Right.
were 40 minutes on the train or in the car to Midtown, to the theater district, and if my
Right.
father really, put the
Yeah,
pedal
yeah.
to the metal, we could be in Atlantic City in an hour and 40 minutes. And we had theaters by us
Wow.
that had stuff. So we were always seeing a show or seeing a concert or something. It didn't seem Entertainment did not
Mhm.
seem like far away or distant or something that was not, attainable.
Right, yeah, and I mean, even Buffalo, there were nightclubs and things like that, but, it was a big thing when someone came to
Sure.
the Shays Buffalo, and everyone came out for it, and, for a short time, I worked as an usher, to see free shows, that came in there, touring
Yeah.
Broadway shows and stuff. But so you're in your teens and you're going down and seeing all this and you're approaching these guys. And who told you? Where did you decide to go to school? Who told you
Well,
about all this stuff?
it's funny, I applied to a bunch of schools, for a marketing major because that's what vice presidents of entertainment, that was their
Mhm.
background. They had degrees in marketing.
Right.
And side note, I had a guidance counselor that told me I was not college material, that I should go to a vocational school. Can you imagine? Shoot,
Really?
I was
No.
I told my parents that, and my mother, marched into there the next day, and she's like, "What the fuck are you telling my kid to go to a vocational school?" Very
Right.
strange.
Yeah. I mean, you don't strike me as a plumber.
No,
it's that's
it's very
really
strange. So
bizarre.
I did my research, and I knew about UNLV, and
Mhm.
my father and I came out here in 1987 for a weekend to see shows.
Mhm.
They asked me what I
Right.
wanted for Christmas and whatever. I said, "Don't get me anything for Christmas, don't get me anything for Hanukkah, don't get me anything for my birthday. Save it up for whatever for the next 5 years. I wanna go to Las Vegas for a weekend." And my father took me to Las Vegas for a
Mhm.
weekend. We saw Bill Cosby
Wow.
and Tony Orlando at the Hilton. We saw Sammy Davis and Jerry Lewis at Bally's, and we saw Tom Jones at
Wow.
Bally's. The other acts in town
Wow.
were Red Skelton was at Caesars, and I
Mhm.
think Rich Little and Tony Tennille were at the Desert Inn. And it was a great, I mean,
Wow.
and it was Vegas was such a
And this
different place. But we went to UNLV. I got a whatever, course guide, and they had a
brochure
course
and
in
yeah.
casino entertainment. And it was taught by a local columnist for the Las Vegas Sun, called Joe Delaney. And Joe was a very
Oh, yeah.
kind of pompous, kind of very authoritative. He presented himself as he'd sit like this,
Ah,
look up,
yes.
talk, and
An
and
expert.
one time he was an A&R guy, for Decca Records. So he had a lot of great stories.
Okay.
And he kinda
Mhm.
knew the business, but the course was not great. But it's what
Right.
lured me out here, and it was the only casino entertainment course in the country at any, hotel management program. Now they all have some sort of, because there's casinos everywhere. Everyone is what do they say? Every
Right. The
American's
casinos
within
everywhere. Yeah,
100
yeah.
miles of casino, or something like that. So
Right.
they're everywhere now, but, and by the way, I did not do well in the course because, he kinda sorta liked me, but not really, but I corrected him a lot because when he said, "Who was the very first act
Ooh.
on stage at the International Hotel?" And I raised my hand and I named the opening act for Barbra Streisand. He said, "No, no, 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 no." And he was going around the room, people
Oh.
would say, "Elvis, this, da, 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 da." He said, "Well, it's Barbra Streisand." And I raised my hand again and said, "Well, you said the very first act." And she had an opening act, which I think was Robert Klein. And I said, "Well, he's you said who was the first act on stage at the International Hotel." Um, but it's interesting. I didn't do well in that class because I don't think he liked me.
Wow. Well.
But years later, we became friendly, and, one of the
Mhm.
cool things about that class is, like, every other week, he would bring the entire class to a show. It was great.
Oh,
So we
nice.
saw, I mean,
Yeah.
these are old time shows, like, we'd see, like, Lido and Jubilee. Once in a while, we'd do a
Mhm.
headliner show, but I got to do that with Penn and Teller. at Bally's and MGM in Rio, we became friendly. So I said, just bring the class to see Penn and Teller. We'll give them a tour backstage. So that was kind of nice and special. But yeah, I didn't do well in the class.
Well, it's obviously affected you later in life.
Yeah. One of the
Um,
great things about moving out here is I got to meet Joel, and Joel became a mentor and a friend and like an uncle to me. And it was pretty amazing.
right. And so how did all that happen? I mean, you came out here
Yeah.
to go to UNLV, and then did you hook up with Joel before you started working with Penn and Teller or after or
I had met him. He moved out here in 92. Late
okay.
92, I think, because at the time, Richard
Mhm.
Sturm was vice president of Bally's, entertainment at Bally's, and he
Mhm.
was moving to the MGM when they were opening the new MGM.
Mhm.
Joel took that job at Bally's. So I moved out here, I went to school at UNLV, and I started working at Caesars in Lake Tahoe. First, I was an intern, a summer intern there in 1991, which led to a full-time job up there. So I was there 91, 92. Then I moved back to Las Vegas
Okay.
and I started working in the entertainment office at Caesar's Palace.
Okay.
And back then it was great because they were trying to be hip and modern, but at the
Mhm.
same time understanding let's not lose our core customer. So they were booking like the Moody
Right.
Blues and Huey Lewis and the News, which was very considered strange for a casino.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
This is still all the showrooms back then had tables and chairs where you sat 10 people at a long
Yep.
at a long, banquet
Yeah, yeah.
table, and then they had the banquettes, the booths, and so it was very different.
Right.
Um, but they would still I got to work with Anne Margaret and George Burns, and there
Wow.
was great,
Mhm.
great people. We used to do a double bill of Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick and Natalie Cole, she
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
hot back then with Unforgettable, had just come out, and she was won Grammys. I
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
work with Ray Charles, and, it was pretty great. I mean, between Tahoe and Caesar's Palace here, I cut my teeth in my salad days, to use two of those,
Yes.
idioms, in a really great time that was the ending of an old era and the starting of a new era.
Right. When I came to Vegas in '99, that the last of that era was sort of petering out. I mean, Rich Little was still playing and Tony Orlando and, you know, but more people that were, considered
Right.
weekend headliners were coming in. I think Seinfeld was already coming in here in '99.
I worked with him on his first headliner engagement at Caesar's Palace in '93. I used to love because no one wanted to do it. I used to love to take the limo. Not I was a passenger in it. They wanted someone
Right.
back then, this never happens anymore. They wanted someone from the entertainment department to meet the artist at the airport.
Sure.
This is when you can go to the gate, go right
Right.
to the
Oh, sure.
gate.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would go out and meet the artist and
Mhm.
get them in the limo and ride back with them, in the limo, which looking
Mhm.
back at it now is kinda strange because like, if that happened with Penn and Teller, I'd be like, "Take another car, like, don't."
Yeah, yeah.
But it was great, and one of the ones I really remember was Seinfeld, and Seinfeld was just becoming hot. The TV show was just becoming hot. Like I said, this is
Mhm.
92-ish, 93,
Okay.
and so I he
Mhm.
took an America West flight in. I met him at the gate. We got on the monorail, and he was very quiet, and he looked up at me, and he said, "It's a dry heat," and I laughed, and, it was the first time he was headlining, so he said, "Could we drive all the way around and come down the strip? I'd really like to see the marquee with my name on it.
Right.
My name has never been on the
Yeah,
marquee
yeah.
before. I'm usually an opening act, or it's very small," and that was kind of a cool moment to share with Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh,
And I
sure.
got to
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
with listen, I got to do that with Ray Charles, and I got very friendly with Florence Henderson that way over the years. Florence was a dear friend. I loved her very much, and that's where I first met her.
Wow. Yeah, I she was on that TV show I was on in Boston,
Yeah,
the Nancy Merrill show, and she
she's
was
great.
very delightful. Um, I mean, there's also, I mean, without going off on a tangent about it, there's also something about that era of quote unquote stars where they just knew how to do it
For
properly.
sure.
You know what I mean? Florence Henderson, everyone, Betty White, Phyllis Diller. And I mean, same thing with musicians. You know, all the musicians you've heard of, jazz musicians like Clark Terry and Jerry Mulligan and all those guys. They all had sort of a sense of of self that they knew who they were, they knew where they stood, they
Yep,
didn't have anything to prove. They're not hungry young
yep.
cutthroat assholes. They're just they're nice to the people around them because they know they're working with them.
Most of them. There were a few people that I work with that, I was like, "Oh, their reputation is absolutely."
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, well, sure, there are
Yeah.
always gonna be a few,
But,
but,
no, I mean,
um,
during that time,
but,
I mean, I have stories about Diana Ross and Julio Iglesias, and, it was and keep in mind, in '91 when I was in Tahoe, I was only 20, so I wasn't even legally allowed to be in a casino.
right,
I mean, just a quick
right,
story how
right.
this, all happened is why is a 20-year-old doing all this stuff. I interviewed for an internship at Caesar's Tahoe, but it was for,
Mhm.
like, hotel stuff, housekeeping, busboy, keno
Right.
runner, and I said to them, "I would
Mhm.
like to work in your entertainment department. You don't have to pay me because it was a paid internship. You don't have to pay me if you put me up with the other interns," because they had a intern condo up there,
Uh-huh.
and I said, "I'll work every day. I don't need a day off." They said, "Okay, well, it's kinda sensitive with contracts and dealing with performers," and, basically saying, "Go away, kid." So I interviewed and I
Right.
put that proposal forth and, I didn't hear from them, and then about a month later, they called and they said, "Hey, are you still interested in working in the entertainment department?" I said, "I am."
Really?
They said, "Our entertainment department, which is 4 people, is now 1 person, and we're going into our busy summer month." Back then, they had an entertainer 7 nights a week, usually 2 weeks, and I said,
Mhm.
"Fantastic." So, it was me and one other person in the entertainment department. It was great
Jesus,
at
at
20.
20.
So it was like
Yeah.
and Caesar's
Uh,
Tahoe had a little bit of a younger crowd. So they would do I mean, we look at it now and we would laugh, but they would do, Eddie Money, that kind of stuff.
right.
They
Oh,
would do
sure.
Hall& and
Yeah.
Oates, but they would still do
Mhm.
Joan Rivers and Neil Sedaka on a double bill and Bob Newhart, and I got to work
Right.
with all those people, and it was fantastic,
Wow.
and I mean, the way that I got to work with Penn& Teller, my job here I'd become the audience development coordinator for a game show at Caesar's Palace called Caesar's Challenge. I don't know if you know this. NBC game
No,
show
I
called
don't. This
Caesar's
is
Challenge hosted by Ahmad Rashad. It was a
okay.
combination of like Joker's Wild meets Wheel of Fortune
Right.
meets Jeopardy. Yeah. It was not a great show. It
Yeah.
was on for 1 season, and,
Mhm.
I got hired to do that.
So you had come down from Tahoe,
That's right, and I was already working in the
eh,
entertainment department.
yeah, at Caesars here in Vegas,
That's right, and
and
then
then they hired you to do this.
his job as basically the liaison for the game show with the network and,
Right. Okay.
Stephen J. Cannell Productions.
Oh, yeah.
I have a business card somewhere, it says it's 9 my office was 9,000 Sunset in West Hollywood, like, it's like that's where they were based, so but, I went to the office once in my
Yeah.
entire time working. But it was great, I mean, now I was working and so I had a TV credit, it was fantastic,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
the game show was canceled after a season.
Okay.
Caesars was not hiring me back for my old position, so I worked with them, for, special events. So I went back to school and I worked at Caesars for big special events. I worked
Mhm.
all the big boxing events at Caesars, all the big WrestleMania events, all the Holyfield fights, the Sugar Ray fights, which was another
Mhm.
facet of entertainment that was fantastic. I loved that. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and
Really?
in about this time in '94, late fall '94, maybe November, December, um, Penn and Teller moved to town full time.
Right. So you weren't at Bally's or
Nothing.
anything to do with them when they showed up there, but
Correct,
Joel booked them there, Joel
correct.
Fishman,
Similar
and
to
you
how he
knew
brought them
Joel
to
at the
Atlantic
time.
City, he brought them out here. They had been working
Right.
here starting in '93. Their first gig here was January of '93, but they were still living in New York. They didn't have homes here.
Right. But did you know Joel at that time when he booked them at Bally's?
I met him once.
Okay.
I
All right.
met him
Okay.
once.
This is good to
I
know.
went to the office because I was doing a project for marketing for one of my marketing classes. I met him that way.
Mhm.
someone said, "Hey, Penn and Teller," it was actually my college advisor. She said, "Penn and Teller are looking for a personal assistant. You should apply."
Mhm.
And that was, I guess, December of '94. Um, and,
Right.
that's how it started with Penn and Teller.
But now, did you know, I mean, you obviously knew of Penn and Teller.
I'd seen them and, I was a fan, you know. I'd first certainly I saw them
Sure.
on TV. Probably the first time I saw them was on Letterman because, I started
Mhm.
watching Letterman in probably '82 and I watched it every night before bed. Even, you know, when I was
Right. Right.
in junior high, I would stay up and watch it. And then, of course, SNL and,
Mhm.
it was, you know, it was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was,
Yeah.
entertaining and wacky and smart and a little irritating and a little
Mhm.
confounding. Um, and again, like nothing, what are they doing?
No, there was nothing. I mean, it's funny because, our friend Mike Close said to me, very, 23 years ago, or whatever, when I was first, I had been with Penn and Teller for, maybe a year. And we were talking just about something else. And he just casually mentioned, well, you're in the most important magic show that's ever existed. You're in the most historically important. They rewrote the rules. They
Yep.
invented a whole style and no one else did it before them. And I do know that. And I've always known that. But, I knew of Penn and Teller through in the '80s in New York, just because everyone was talking about them. You know what I mean? They were the hip guys. They were on. It was on Stern. He was on Letterman, and I knew of them, but I wasn't
Sure.
a Magic fan, and I didn't really care about it and follow it. But I would catch them on TV, and they were. It wasn't Doug Henning,
Right.
and it wasn't Copperfield, and that's what I
Right.
associated magicians with. So when I realized that there were, there was this intellectual content that was so far beyond. I mean, just thinking about magic, the way they think about it was so far off the
Yeah.
mainstream track that I was attracted
Me
to
too.
it. But so you just applied for the personal assistant job and
Yeah. And of course, you know, I knew that they worked Bally's and I knew that in the '80s they
Mhm.
worked Atlantic City a lot. Um, so that, you know, there was that Joel connection
Right,
there where, you know, Joel booked them in Atlantic City to they first started as an opening act in Atlantic City, but on a 50-50 double bill, but they were opening for BB King, they opened for The Temptations,
right.
and then they became the headliner, and they
Mhm.
then people like, Dana Carvey and Paula Poundstone and America, you know, the music group would open for them.
Right.
And so I was very well
Mhm.
aware of that, you know, okay, so they're dangerous and they're odd, they're funny and they do pretty crazy shit on TV, but they also work casinos. This is it
Right. Which was also weird. I
for sure.
mean, for that, but I mean, that was I believe that was 100% down to Joel. I mean, if Penn will say,
100%.
he talked us into this and it was a genius move.
Bill saw them in New York in '85 or '86, worked on bringing them to Atlantic City. They didn't wanna do it. They fought it. And,
Right.
he said, I'll bring you down. If you wanna go home every night, I'll bring you back and forth in a limo, back and forth the city.
Mhm.
I'll pay you well,
Right.
and we'll put you as, you know, an opening act, so the pressure to draw is not on you, but you'll still get
Mhm.
get 50% billing with the headliner, so it'll be 50-50 billing. And,
Mhm.
they went down like, "Oh, these are the same people that see us in New York, same people that see us in Philadelphia. This is" and they became
Right.
casino act very early on, you know, a lot of acts back then waited to the trajectory of their career was going down, and they were doing it
Right.
on their way up.
Right. Which was
Boom.
very unusual. When Penn first asked when he invited me to the show here after coming to see me make a record, he said, "You gotta come and see our show." And I thought, well, I sat in the show and I said, "Wait a minute. This is not an act that's on the downslope." You know what I mean? This is not an act in the twilight
Right.
of their career. These guys are, young. I mean, they were in their, 40s and 50s and they're killing it. Because when he said to me, "Do you want to be in the show?" I tell this story all the time about Gray Sargent, who's a great guitarist, great jazz guitarist. And in 1996, we were working together in Boston, and he got a call to do some shows with Tony Bennett. And we famously thought, Well, you might as well do him because he's getting up there and he won't be doing it that much longer. This was
Right.
1996, and he winds up having a 35-year career with
It's pretty much since about 1996, people have said to me, "Well, what are you gonna do when you retire?" What I've been hearing that now for 31
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, yeah. No, but I mean, but it was same became so obvious watching their show that this is an like as an art, this is an idea that's just growing and be getting
Yeah,
hotter and better. And as evidenced by the fact that they've done
right,
150 tricks for Fool
right.
Us over the past 10 years. They're not slowing down. But I want to think that the idea to put them in a casino
Yeah,
was genius. I mean, Joe, that was a
yep.
genius idea. And again, now everybody does it. I mean, it's not, I mean, you've got Adele and you've got, everybody's playing.
Not only that, it's you name any act in any genre of music or comedy, they're all playing casinos. And Penn and Teller were really one of the first,
Mhm.
certainly in Atlantic City and absolutely in Las Vegas. They started here either right when Cirque started or right before, like, within weeks, and,
Really?
when the guys first started, Frank Sinatra was still playing Vegas, and
Right.
you still
Yeah.
had that old era of entertainment, and I really think that they're one of the acts that opened the doors for other acts to say, "Oh, it's okay to play here."
Right. Right. It's not
Right.
your
When
retirement
I
plan.
when
It's not your, the death knell to your career.
when I first started working for them in '94, '95, there were still the city was trying that ridiculous family-friendly thing that,
Oh yeah, yeah.
didn't last but a couple years. But I've seen them kind of weathered is not the right word, but I've kind of seen them just steam right through, uh, all these different
Right.
eras of Vegas and Vegas entertainment, and no more
Right.
headliners.
And
We're all gonna do headliners. We're not gonna do headliners. Bring in the kids, bring in
right.
the families. We're all gonna do topless shows.
Yeah.
We're all gonna
Yeah.
and
Right.
they kept their heads down and they did the work and they
Yeah.
just maintained.
Yes.
And then one
Yeah.
of the things that I wanted to do with them was to bring them into more of a mainstream, profile. And
Right.
I remember Penn and I were having dinner at Bally's, and I think Rich Nathanson was with us. This would have been
Okay.
summer of '98,
Mhm.
and I said, "So, I wanna talk to you, uh, about something, and I would just want you to try it. We're playing Vegas more and more, and, and this is during I call the swingers era of Vegas. That movie, changed swingers, Vince Vaughn, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of young guys coming here, smoking cigars, eating steaks, getting
Right.
hookers, and it was a very different, wearing open collared shirts, and so it was a very different
Sure. Yep.
demo that was coming here. And I said, everybody's coming here now, and we need to do more commercial stuff. And I said, oh, and by the way, I booked you on Hollywood Squares. Hollywood Squares was coming back, and this was the Tom
Right.
Bergeron, version of it,
Right.
not the Peter Marshall or John Davidson version of it. But
Right.
and they both kind of went, oof, game show, really, a game show? And they did it,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
ended up doing it for whatever, like, the entire, like, 7 or 8-year run of the series. I think
Mhm.
they ended up doing, like, 20 or 30 weeks of it, because you would go in,
Wow.
and they'd shoot
Mhm.
1
Mhm.
week in 1 day. Saturday, and they do the whole
Right.
week on a Saturday, and, I mean, it seemed like we were always there, and,
Yeah, yeah.
that was also, I mean, talk about show business stories there. The people that we did that show with, everybody from Little
Mhm.
Richard to, Todd Bridges and Gary Coleman. It was a dynamic duos day, which was you woulda loved it. It was Adam West and Burt Ward, Todd Bridges, Gary Coleman, Dom DeLuise and Burt Reynolds, Martin Mull and, Fred Willard, Smothers Brothers. I can't remember who the others were. And it was like,
Jesus.
I was in heaven. I was like, "This is
Yeah.
this is
Oh,
fantastic."
sure, sure. This is
You know, it was the Hollywood
Well,
Square, and so that kind of that era, they were doing sitcom stuff. They were doing Sabrina the Teenage Witch, they were doing Drew Carey,
Right. Right. And they friends and yeah.
more open to doing things that they necessarily wouldn't do in the past.
Well, yeah, and you're certainly I mean, a big part of that is you having the foresight to
Foresight, or as they might say, no taste in entertainment, but yeah,
well well, I mean, let's just say that your predecessor was known for turning a lot of things down that
yes,
maybe he shouldn't have. Well, it's funny because I was thinking about the first time I met you, which I'm sure you have no recollection of,
I don't.
but it was probably in
Okay,
2001, and it was over at Penn's house, and you came by at about midnight with a bunch of
correct.
groceries. And I will remember that you brought some Wolfgang Puck pizzas, the barbecue chicken pizzas, I think they were. And Penn said, "Jonesy, this is Glenn. If you want anything done with Penn and Teller, you talk to Glenn because he controls everything." He said, "Don't piss him off
And
ever."
see, at that time, and it still happens, maybe I don't know, there are other managers that do this, and I think it's why they stick around. I was buying them groceries, and I was buying gifts for
Yeah,
girlfriends,
yeah,
and I was buying
right. Right, no, he said I mean, he said to me after you left, after he said to me, "Don't ever piss him off if you want anything from Penn and Teller." He said, "Glenn just runs my life." And he wasn't being hyperbolic, you know what I mean? He was just
yeah,
saying the case, and if you know Penn the way we know Penn, he needs somebody to run his life because
sure.
he couldn't care less about how you know?
I mean, those were different days. He was single. We were still,
Yeah.
we weren't touring as much then because we started here at the Rio at that point.
Well, yeah, you'd started, but you weren't full-time
Gotcha. That's right.
'cause you full-time was
Uh,
June of
so
2002.
we're still touring quite a bit, and, those are certainly the Hollywood
Yeah,
Squares days, and Penn was single, so he'd gotten
right,
rid of the apartment in New York at that time, but he was he was always on the road.
right, right. No, I know because part of when early relationship with him was, can you stop by the house and make sure
Yes.
everything's okay
Yeah.
while he was out on the road? And I had nothing better
Yeah.
to do. I had nobody out here, and it was, I was working at the Eiffel Tower until 11 o'clock at night, and then I just drive over to the Slammer.
Back then, by the way, when we weren't on the road and we weren't at Bally's, or the MGM, because we did 2 years at the MGM, Penn was often my show partner to many of these shows. We saw
Uh huh. Oh
I
yeah.
mean, we saw Liza Minnelli, we saw Andrew Dice Clay, we saw Sinbad, we
Mhm.
saw Robert Goulet, we saw Bo Diddley, we saw tons of people, we saw Stephen
Hmm.
Eydie, when I would make him go to these
Sure.
shows and he'd be like, "Oh, really?" And then he'd go, "That was amazing."
Yeah. Well, I say this all the time too, but I was bemoaning the lack of talent of a particular pop artist in the lobby of Soundtrack in New York when I was working there, and they were in one of the rooms, and I said to my friend who owned the studio, I said, actually, they sound all right. And he said, Jonesy, you don't get to this level in show business without
Mm,
being a professional and having something there. And it's true. I mean, you can take
yeah,
everything with a grain of salt. And I mean, people that you actively don't enjoy their music, but there was something there that got them
sure.
or the work ethic or whatever. So you go see a show in Vegas, you expect a level of professionalism
Yeah.
and they put on a show.
I remember, the Circus Maximus that at Caesars was closing this had to be 2000,
Mhm.
and he was here with Paul Provenza, and they called me from Pink Death, his old Bronco,
Uh-huh.
and they said, "What should we see tonight?"
Yep.
I said, "Go see Stephen Eydie. They're closing the Circus Maximus.
Uh-huh.
Go see Stephen Eydie." And they both kinda laughed. They said, "Go see them." And they were both I think they went with
Mhm.
not a chip on their shoulder, but this is gonna be horrible and cheesy. And they called me after like, "That might have been the best show we've ever seen."
Right.
In a
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best
I mean, well, I told you my sad Stephen Eydie
I don't think
story.
you have.
When I came out here in '99, I came out with this singer. We had signed a deal to work at the Paris, and that all fell through. But we were out here, and a woman that I knew from Soundtrack in New York had taken a job as James
Mm,
Caan's personal assistant. And he was out here shooting a movie. and he had an invitation for the Millennium New Year from '99 to 2000 to go over to the Las Vegas Country Club to
Yeah.
Steve and Eydie's for the big New Year's Eve party, and we
Mm.
were invited. She got me and Jackie an invitation to go, and I was so excited because I knew Steve and Eydie's work from my whole life, but also just the idea of my first year in Vegas being at the Las Vegas Country Club,
In
seeing
your
Steve
home.
and Eydie. I was
Yeah.
like, "This is perfect, perfect." And James Caan got the flu
Oh,
or a cold and decided at the last minute not to go,
yeah.
and so we couldn't go. And so not only did I not have a gig on the highest paying New Year's Eve parties of all time, where I had turned down a $10,000 gig in
Right.
New York with her because we thought we were gonna be in Vegas doing all this work. And I mean, I had turned it down in September, so it wasn't like I could call them. But I wound up doing nothing but sitting at home on the 99.
You know where I was that night? I was seeing Barbra
Where's that?
Streisand at the MGM.
Oh,
So
there
the
you
next
go.
day, we
Wow.
flew to
That's excellent.
Tahoe and did a show at Harrah's.
Wow. Wow, there you go. Well, to forward a little bit and not to take up the rest of your entire day, because we could do this for another 3 hours.
I mean, we haven't even talked about the brilliance of John Davidson yet.
We haven't talked about the brilliance of John Davidson and your side gigs, as I don't wanna say that, but I mean, you're an entertainment icon, but, I mean, for fuck's sake, you're in the Hall of Fame. But, you also handle Piff, and you've done stuff with so many
Yeah,
other people that you never even mentioned to me. It's like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, she's doing this. I still
yeah, yeah,
take
yeah.
care of her booking
I don't do
sometimes."
that as much because most of them are either not with us anymore or they're older and they don't
Right.
work as much, but, there was a time where I was booking, uh vintage is I always used to use the word vintage, and then one day,
Mhm.
I made the reference in front of Marilyn, McCoo, and Billy Davis, who are dear friends, and I booked them here in Las
Yep.
Vegas, and, she turned to me as she was going on stage, and she said to me, she said, "Vintage?" So I haven't used that anymore, but, yeah.
That seems wise.
Then when she came off stage, I said, "I meant classic." She went, "Classic?" Um, well, yeah, no, back then, Lainey Kazan, Connie Stevens, um,
Yeah. Yep.
Carol Lawrence, John
She's
Davidson. I'm looking around the posters on my wall. Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of other acts
um,
like that that hadn't worked here in years that still wanted to work, and they were still good. And, at that time, there were
mhm,
still smaller hotels here that were booking those kind of names. And, so
right.
yeah, so I got I think you knew that you like 20 years ago, I was working with the estate of Wayland Flowers,
Yes.
and their manager, found, a great puppeteer named Rick Sky, who's a cabaret artist in New York, to do the act, and we got bookings all over. We got
Mhm.
bookings in theaters in Atlantic City, and we played the show here a couple times, and that was one of those strange things where you don't think you'll ever see. I mean, when I was a kid, I loved Waylon and Adam. They were on everything all the time.
Sure.
And that's one of those things that when Waylon died in '88, that's over. It's done. You'll never see that again.
Right.
And, then the estate hired a puppeteer to go out and do the act again. There was a little bit of pushback on it. People didn't like the idea.
Right.
But the people that did come to the show, they're like, and it was a loving tribute to Waylon, and,
Right.
it was
Sure.
great, and that was a lot of fun too. We played a couple gigs in New York, at Florida, and that was a lot of fun too. So yeah, it's like
The power
that
of
side
Madeline.
stuff, and Piff is a prodigy of Penn and Teller, and Piff has been in
Yeah.
Flamingo now for 10 years, and um,
Yeah.
he's in a class of his own. He is he's funny,
Right.
he is so good on his feet, and, he's doing what he's supposed to do, which is being the best magician. I mean, he's an incredible magician,
Right.
and he's always working on stuff, and, I love
Right.
working with him.
Well, it's yeah, and I mean, it's the whole evolution of Piff, from not fooling them but killing them on Fool Us is, it's just a wonderful story too. And I mean, I remember when he was at the Cosmo or the
Cosmo,
Aria,
yeah.
wherever that was, and that was like pure performance art. It was really weird. And he's just a guy. I mean, I think what draws Penn and Teller to him, and probably you too, is that he comes at magic from a completely different angle, the same
Correct.
way Penn and Teller did. You know what I mean? There's so much of that same, I mean, out of the box, quote unquote, thinking about, that no one who's studying cardistry and sitting in a room by themselves, they don't really come up with these ideas. These are artists that use magic as
That's right.
their medium. But anyways, well, it's great. Piff is being handled by you because from bullshit to to fool us and everything else that you've done for Penn and Teller, I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that they're as relevant as they've ever been. And they're an act that people turn on their television and see, and they're coming into people's homes, you know,
And I think that's I mean, that's really because of them. They wanna work, always coming up with new
right.
ideas,
Yeah,
and they don't wanna play golf, and they don't wanna go to Tahiti for a month.
right,
So they always, always wanna
right,
work, and I always wanna work. So it's been great that
right.
they allow me to sometimes I'll throw something in front of them and they'll say no. But, Penn jokes that I
Mhm.
just, I answer the phone and say yes.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, but I mean, there is that. I feel the same way. You know what I mean? I mean, nothing broke me more than the pandemic in terms of
Right.
not being able to work. I mean, I've
Sure,
worked since I was 14 years
sure.
old professionally. I've been working. To be honest with you, if you really want to, if you want to pick nits, I've been in business longer than Penn and Teller. I did my first gig in 1974
Oh,
when
wow.
I was
Yeah,
12 years old for St. Patrick's Day. They paid me $50 to play St. Patrick's Day in my
yeah.
church auditorium for the St. Patrick's Day party, and I was 12 in
And
1970.
I mean, I remember during the pandemic, you wanted to work. You wanted to get back to work. We had some of like,
Yeah,
"This is
yeah.
great. How long will this last? This is great."
Yeah, yeah, I know. I mean, I said it to you at the time. I said, if somebody said to me, "I will pay you your full salary for a year to do nothing," I'd
Yeah,
say, "Go fuck yourself.
yeah,
I want to work." I mean, I lost 125
yeah.
pounds out of stress, basically. You know,
And I think that's what the pandemic showed them. Yeah, no, we don't wanna retire. We don't wanna not
right,
do anything. We
right. We
we
just,
want to be on stage. And,
yeah,
during the pandemic, we did a lot of, Zoom shows,
yeah, yeah.
um,
I remember.
and we did those Fool Us specials, Fool Us at Home specials.
Right,
And then, we
right.
were
Yeah,
we were locked in the Rio for
yeah. Uh, that was that
oh,
was like the overlook. That was go down and get your bagged sandwich for dinner.
oh, man, we were locked in there for what was it, 2.5 weeks or whatever. I just remember
Yeah.
yeah, I just
Oh,
yes. I'm so happy to leave that day.
it was so bizarre. But yeah, well, I'm gonna say we should do another one of these because there's more to talk about in terms of
Ooh, a part 2.
yeah, part two. I've already done a couple that were two-parters, but I got all the good stuff in terms of your career. But I like it when you talk about I wanna hear stories of, of when you met Red
Sure.
Skelton, what was that like? Or what was it like when, hanging out
Sure.
with Shecky Green or, you know,
Shooting the Shit with Norm Crosby.
Norm Crosby, yeah, and how much effort can we put into the Foster Brooks Day
Oh, yeah.
that we wanna get a national
Did you
holiday?
know speaking of Foster Brooks, who, I just love, it's actually one of the first shows I saw when I moved out
Me
here.
too.
Did you know, and I don't know where it is or who has it, but we should track it down. When the MGM Grand first opened in 90
Oh, the
audio
Foster Brooks
animatronic,
puppet?
it sat at the
Animatronic,
bar,
yeah, yeah.
and he recorded those jokes, and I remember just being in awe of it thinking, "This might be the greatest thing in the world." But where
It's
is
great.
that?
Eh, I believe Nate did a little research and it was
Ah,
destroyed. I hope not. I'm not sure. Because we were talking about it one day before the show, Penn and Robbie and Nate and I, and it was, Yeah, an actual robot of Foster Brooks at the bar telling jokes.
Did you ever do you probably did you see it? Yeah.
No, I would have gone to see it,
It was in the bar right off the lobby, and he
but,
was just hanging there at the bar with his, and he was in a tuxedo and, it was the whole, and it was a thing, and, it was fan
Now, I do remember when I first went to Caesars, like, the Joe Louis statue.
I was yes,
Um,
one of the things that, when I
I don't know
worked
if that's
there,
still there.
the Joe Louis stamp came out.
Oh,
We
really?
had a big Joe Louis day because Joe Louis, I don't know if you know, Joe Louis was like wasn't really a host, but he was like an ambassador at the
No, but he was
hotel
like
for years.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
launch of the stamp was done there at the statue, was at the time was in the sports book. I don't know where it is now, but it was over by the sports
yeah.
book, and, like, the postmaster general was there. We had a whole big event to launch the stamp.
Wow, wow. Well, yeah, and of course, I was stupid remember the movie Mars
Of
Attacks?
course.
Well, yeah, well, of course. Well, they had, like, Ken Norton or somebody, right? Who was playing, like,
I think so, yeah.
the washed up boxer at Caesars.
Tom Jones is in that.
Um, but
Tom Jones
oh,
is in
Tom
it.
Jones is killing in that. It's a great performance. Well, anyways, but yeah, I mean, we can talk more about that.
Next time, I'll tell you my story about Tom Jones and going up to his suite.
Oh, well, you can tell that now.
I don't know how great it is. He would have been my 1st or 2nd show in Tahoe. So this would have been '91,
Mhm.
and I was a little nervous because it's Tom Jones, and the limo pulls up and he
Sure.
gets out, because we always met them at the front door. If we didn't meet them at the airport, we always met them at the front door. That doesn't happen anymore.
Okay. No.
And we got out and gave him his keys, and we walk him up to the room, and he had 2 big suites that adjoined, and there was a bar in his suite, and there was a door that adjoined into the next suite, and
Mhm.
I'd forgotten to unlock that door. So I let him
Oh.
in, and he said, "Is the other suite, uh, accessible?" And I jiggled the door, I'm like, "God, no." And I had already fumbled the keys to get him into the suite, so I was a little nervous,
Uh-huh.
and I said, "I'll go around and I'll unlock the door from the other side." So,
Mhm.
and my memory's a little fuzzy of it, so I went out and I think I left the other key on the bar, so I had to go back in and knock on the door. He let me in, I took the key, I went out, got into the room, the adjoining room, and I had left the other key, the adjoining room key, again on the bar. So I
Oh,
very
gee.
timidly knocked on the door, and I knocked again, and it's just the 2 of us, just me and Tom Jones,
Right.
and he finally opens the door and goes, "Who are you?" And that was my Tom. And years later, I got to tell him that story. We went to dinner. Penn and I went to dinner
Uh-huh.
with, Tom Jones and his son, Mark, who's his manager, and I got to tell that story, and they said,
Mhm.
"Oh, I was joking." That was, like, one of my first real like, 1st or 2nd week being left alone with a star and being nervous and
Mhm.
not having a plan of, "Okay, keep the keys in your pocket, don't knock," all that.
Right, right. Well, yeah, but of course, because I mean, Tom
Yeah,
Jones was big.
Tom
I
Jones.
mean, and, it's yeah, exactly. And more so to you than probably many other people.
That is correct because there was a my parents had seen him twice in Las Vegas in the '70s, and they had an 8-track
Mhm.
tape, Tom Jones Live at Caesar's Palace, which, if you look at the cover, is
Oh,
pretty
nice.
great. It's him in a toga surrounded by goddesses, and I devoured that 8-track. I think there was a time I would
Oh,
come
yeah.
home every day after school and listen to "I You Have Nothing" on the and I was amazed by his vocal power. If you listen to that track on that album, it's amazing.
Yeah. No, it is. I've heard it. It's
I think it was recorded in '75, and it was in that showroom that years later I was working in every day.
wow. I Well, I'll tell you, one of the few shows that I've seen. I mean, I've seen fair amount of shows over the not so much since the pandemic, but certainly one of the best shows that I saw was probably, I don't know, 2000. When was the pandemic? 2020, 2019. So probably it was probably maybe 2014. Tom was at the MGM. So late 60s, early 70s he was at that point,
Yeah,
better than ever, you
yeah.
know?
When I and by that time, he had changed a bit. I mean, and when I say change, keeping up with the time.
Well,
When I
yeah,
first saw him in Atlantic City in the '80s, I mean, the shirt was there was one button at the waist, the
right.
cross was this big, he still had the big hair, he had the tight satin
Yeah,
pants, it was still
sure.
that Tom Jones, and
Right,
he
right,
sang his hits, but, um, there wasn't the appreciation of him that there is now in pop culture then. But, like,
right,
then, what,
right.
2 or 3 years later, he was on the charts with Kiss with The Art of Noise, and that kind of started his,
Yep.
"Oh, might be
Y
kind of," and he
yeah,
also yeah,
and yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the same thing happened with Tony Bennett.
correct. That's right.
You know? And
Yeah,
that was his son,
yeah.
Danny, that made that happen. And, and Jen and I saw, Tony Bennett when
Mhm.
he was 91 at the Wynn the last time, either last time or the second last time that he was here. Um, 90 or 91. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he
yeah.
was 90 or 91. And I mean, he didn't know where he was probably, but the audience wasn't really clued into that, and his voice was better, as good as ever. And I mean, he sang "Fly Me to the Moon" with no microphone, the whole thing. And it's yeah, it's but Tom Jones was great, and I could see you getting a
Yeah.
little flustered around him at your age for that time and at his level. I mean,
I was able to pull it together for Neil by the time Neil Sedaka got in.
it seems like a little different, but um, well, I want to thank you for doing this because this has been really fun, and I've loved every second of it, and we'll do it again because there's deeper, more deep shit to get into because you haven't even talked about non-musical
Nice.
acts really of the people that you've seen,
Yeah.
and you've seen them all. I mean, you really not only do you have an incredible and I'm not just saying this to be nice, but you have a recall of these things that is astonishing. You know what I mean? You seem to have details that you haven't forgotten. And a lot of people can say, "Oh yeah, I think I saw him back in '73, but I don't remember if the show was any good."
I can tell you the month and the day and the year and the location, yeah.
Yeah, it's mind numbing. It's great. Well, thank you so much, Glenn Ally, for being a part of the stereo image
Well, thank you.